thought I would pull out my planer here and plane a piece of wood, of course, that I took in from my house. It's actually a cutting board that I made quite a number of years ago. The cutting board is made from cherry, and it's Ontario cherry, and I know that this steamed cherry is Ontario cherry also. So, you know, we're not talking different species here. Now this, I made this, I'm not even gonna guess actually. This might be 20 years old, as old as that. And you can see how dark it's gotten. And I used it for a lot when I first made it. And then I stopped using it because I had something else. The big thing about this thing is it had a knife holder in it. So you could put the knife inside here. So this part's for the handle, a little bit would stick out. And then there's a slot in here that goes right through to the end that the blade sticks into as well. I never used that. That was an excellent idea, but I never used it. Now, lately, well, within the last 5 or 6 years, I've started using it again. So it's got that very distinct onion smell to it. And that's basically what I use it for cutting up, you know, vegetables and onions and so on and so forth. And to clean it, I normally just take my knife and I scrape it into the sink, you know, scrape the surface down, and then I wash it off. So what I thought I would do to make a fair comparison, you could say, or a realistic comparison, is to plane this thing down so that I'm down to fresh wood on both sides. It's in rough shape anyway. It's still a little over 1 inch thick, but it's come apart here at the edge where it's actually screwed and glued together. There are drywall screws in here actually. And up at this end, it's almost through the surface. So I'm gonna have to take those screws out before I do this, just in case the planer knife nicks the head of that screw. That would be a bad thing. Since these are just drywall screws, there's a good chance that they'll break off when I try to take them out. Maybe a better tool than the impact driver would be a screwdriver, so I'll get one now and just take my time. Actually, it's turning very easily, which is a surprise because I expected that it would be really stuck in there because, you know, the cutting board gets wet and then it dries out, and it's wet and it dries out. Well, here it is. First one anyway. Now, the reason why these are so close to the surface of the board is because of that slot that I cut in there. Otherwise, they could have been, you know, down in here somewhere. I just made it this way for that slot, for that, you know, recess for the handle as well. I mean, otherwise it'd be very difficult to cut that slot in there. Now this is, it's loose, but it's not coming off. I don't know if it'll make it through the planer. Still on there, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. I've got my planer set to make the first pass. I've also got this piece of wood here that's roughly the same thickness, or nearly exactly actually. And what that'll do is it'll prevent snipe from, you know, being on this board. I made a video about that a few years ago, and I find that to be the best way to stop your planer from sniping, and that's to run a piece in that's sacrificial, you could say, in first. And while that's still under both rollers of the planer, make sure that you have your other one being fed in as well. So what I'll do is I'll run this in first and run this in right tight behind it. And that way there won't be any snipe on this piece of wood. So that was the first pass. I don't know exactly how much I took off there, but I think that this is the natural aged color of the cherry. When you cut down the cherry tree, it's not this dark, and it's not this dark here either. But if you compare the two, and I don't know if this is coming through in the camera, but this is definitely more red in color than this is over here. This is more brown orange than this right here. So you can see that. Anyway, I'm going to make a couple more passes, another on the bottom and then one more on the top, and I'll compare in between the pictures. Okay, so they're pretty close. I don't think, the color variation between the two would stop me from using this as cherry. I think it's a pleasant color. It's just the shading is, not the same, definitely not the same. This is red and this is more orange brown. But you know what, you might like this better, so I know there's a lot of controversy about it. And while I was there at my local place that sells this stuff, they also had steamed walnut, black walnut, and that didn't look right to me either. It looked, I don't know, not the warm brown that black walnut is. It was something slightly different. But you know what? With the right treatment, it's like I did with the Star, was I used linseed oil on it. So that might mellow out the red and make it a little bit more amber and better match that. Also, something like amber shellac might do that as well. I got one other thing I need to do with this, and that's to rip this edge off and glue it back on again. Since it is loose and I don't want to put those screws back in, I figure I'll just cut along the seam and then I'll glue it with polyurethane construction adhesive, which is waterproof, and then clamp it up and leave it overnight.